Hey, Cleaning Nation, Mike Campion here with Jackson Pinkoski, fresh off a plane back from Japan. We just spent all the time reminiscing about his great trip there, so maybe he'll share a little of that. But our official topic today is we are going to talk about using data, not drama, to make decisions when it comes to marketing. I've said several times before, I think Jackson and I are pretty good marketers, but if you took away our data, we'd be terrible marketers. You can take average marketers and give them good data and tell them what that data means. They can make good decisions. So we see a lot of people either having wrong expectations or letting their emotions color their decisions. Like I was just doing a call with one of our clients, and she was saying how earlier, because we coach everyone to do sales calls in person, right? She's like, well, I used to give quotes over the phone and I was closing like 80% of the bids I went on, I would close. And now I feel like I'm down to like 50% because I don't give bids over the phone. You know, what's going on? I was like, well, how many sales would you get? You know, she said, well, I might get 3 or 4, I might get, 10 calls and go on 3 or 4 bids and sell 2 or 3 clients. And now I might get 10 calls and go on, or 20 calls and go on, 15 appointments and sell 8 clients. So my close ratio is, 50% as opposed to 80%. So I'm doing something wrong. It's like, but you went from getting 2 clients to getting 8 clients. And if each client's worth $400, like that's tens of thousands of dollars a year of recurring revenue that you're adding. So I think we kind of get into, or local service ads, another good one. We're like, the leads suck. They're no good. And what that typically means when we start tracking. So when we're not tracking, what that means is the leads suck. They're no good. I just waste a bunch of money. But we force them to track. It's like, I got 30 leads for $600. And of those 30 leads, I only went on 10 bids. And of those 10 bids, I only closed 4 clients. But those, well, how much did those 4 clients get? Well, they're, $1,800 a month. It's like, well, what are you talking about? You made a crazy amount. Or on the commercial side, it might be something like, I sent out, 100 mailers and, only 80 got delivered. And, only 1 guy called me back. It's like, all right, well, did he buy? Well, yeah. How much is he? $2,000 a month. It's like, well, good Lord, man. Like, what are we doing? So I guess I want to just kind of talk about the role of tracking and how to look at the data to make decisions as opposed to the stories that we tell ourselves of that guy sucks, or these clients are no good, or that Facebook doesn't work, or just all these like sweeping statements we make without data, just going off of, I guess, how we feel. So Jackson, you're closer to the clients and that they kind of, really dive into the stuff with you. How are you experiencing that? And how can we take that information and help Cleaning Nation get a different result?
Yeah. It's funny. I was just talking to someone earlier today, a couple hours ago, about this because they came on a call and they said, I specifically on their Facebook ads, they said, "Oh, my Facebook ads aren't doing, I don't feel they're doing as well, or I'm getting fewer leads than I normally do, and what do we need to change to make it better?" And it's like, okay, well, let's take a look. And when we end up looking at it and you look at the data, if you look at, the past 2 days, your lead flow, they might have like 10 leads. But if you look at the past week, we got like 30 leads. And if you look at the week before that, you have another 20 leads. And if you compare that back to October or the last month, it's on pace for the same amount for the first half of the month, or maybe a little lower, or maybe even a little higher. But you get to look at it the big picture of things. You can't, especially with marketing, you don't take the data from yesterday and base your entire marketing plan off of it. It's too big of a fluctuation, especially this time of year. This podcast is in November. This is holiday shopping time. Stuff fluctuates, up and down on almost like an hourly basis as opposed to like a daily basis. So you have to make sure that when you're looking at your data, it is that full and complete picture, because it's so easy. The human mind by default wants to lock in and remember the bad things or the things that aren't working right more so than the actual things that are working. And so if you're not even tracking properly and you're not getting those things that are working well, you're just going to focus in on the fact that, oh, I'm paying $50 per lead, or I got 10 leads this week, and last week I got 30. What's going on? You need to take that full picture, and it gives you a better understanding. If things are going well, great. And then if things are not going well, you can actually make educated adjustments as opposed to just kind of being a, as they say, a fart in the wind kind of thing.
So, gosh, I forget when I heard this, but I remember it was from Dan Kennedy, who I like quite a bit. He talked about, I was actually an audience, a live audience, and he asked the group, if you got two lead sources that, say, your new sales worth $100 of, gross margin to you. And one lead source brings in leads at $10 and the other lead source brings in leads at $25. Which lead source do you go? And of course, everybody's like, oh, the $10 one, of course. And his answer, which seemed weird until you understand, and it was obvious, he's like, you take both of them, you numbskull. Like, if I got $100 of gross margin, would I prefer to get would I prefer a $10 lead? Sure. But the reality is leads aren't infinite, they're finite, right? So I want as many lead sources as possible. It's like if I put $1 in this ATM and I get $1.10 out, and Jackson's got an ATM, he puts $1 and he gets $2 out. Everyone thinks his ATM's better. But if you look a little deeper, you might find that he can only put $10 in a month to his ATM, but maybe my ATM will expect $10,000 a month. Now all of a sudden, which is a better ATM, right? And the right answer is let's use both, right? Like I think the $1.10 out when I can spend $10,000 a month is going to do better than the $2 out, but I can only spend $100 a month. But why wouldn't I put dollars in both those ATMs? So we kind of get nutty with, well, this is a better return on investment. Like people go nuts for referrals, which is great. I love referrals because they get used to 80% of them buy and they buy at full price and they're super happy and I love them. And they get cold leads and like, these leads suck. It's like compared to referrals, yes, but how many referrals can you get in a month? Depending on the size of your company, 0, 6, 2. Whereas some of the other things you might be able to get dozens or hundreds of leads in a month. So first and foremost, always look at ROI, right? We kind of judge leads compared to one another. It's like, just, am I making more money than I put in, right? If I put in $1 and I get out $2, let's just crank that up. Second, people get weird and are like, they start being afraid to scale. So we'll say, do more. Like, well, if I do more, it'll do this. Or they think of all these things, like just make it break, right? If you're spending $100 on something for a cleaning company and it's getting you $300, $400 to even $200 on recurring revenue every month, why don't you spend $1,000 and see what happens? Well, it's not going to work. Like, okay, well, let's find out. Maybe you spend $1,000. Like, wow, the ROI didn't change at all. And maybe at $2,000 a month, it starts to fall. So, okay, now we'll try $1,500, but test it, make it break. Most people are afraid to scale because they make up a bunch of reasons why it's not going to work. Keep increasing your budget until your ROI gets down to where it's no longer acceptable. But again, I'd rather a higher budget with a slightly lower ROI if it's still positive return on investment than a lower budget. So we're really looking for the most growth we can get. And people miss that when they're like, well, I got repeat and referrals and that's how I grow my whole business. I was like, well, that's why you're doing 20 grand a month. You've been doing this for 10 years. Jackson, what am I missing?
No, that's totally right. People do love referrals. And until you said it, I never really thought that people compare leads to leads, like Apple. It's like comparing apples to oranges though. Really in those instances. But then too, I encourage everybody that's listening to this to remember when you're looking at your value of a customer. So I know a lot of people will complain like, oh, $50 cost per lead is too high. Like, okay, well, what's your customer value? Oh, it's, $150 a month. That's on the low end, but $150 a month. It's like, okay, well, how long do you keep that customer? Well, I keep them for 6 months. It's like, okay, so it's really 150 times 6. So you paid $50 for that value. So look at the whole customer value, not just, that 1 month and that one time, because you're not spending $50 over and over to get them. Once you spent that $50, they're a customer. Everything else is just icing on the cake after that.
Hey, Clean Nation, Mike Campion here. One of my least favorite things about these podcasts are we found that people love the show and they love the information, but when I talk to you guys in person, stuff doesn't get done. People love the podcast, but they don't take any action. If you'd like to actually implement this and get this done in your world, we have a whole team of people that do exactly that. If you go to growmycleaningcompany.com/talk, you can book a time with either myself personally or one of our teammates to at least help you come up with a plan to actually implement and change your life. So if you want to go
go from getting these good ideas in your head to getting them in your life, just book a free call with myself or my team, growmycleaningcompany.com/talk. And we can go from this one-to-many format to one-to-one and really get you some results. Excited to talk.
Yeah, and that's why we encourage so much recurring customers versus one-time customers, because the lifetime value, even people are like, oh, I got a post-construction cleanup for $4,000. It was a ton of money or something. It's like, okay, but how much work and how many people and blah, 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 blah. You get a customer that's, I think most of our customers on the residential side average is probably $400. On the commercial, gosh, could be a couple grand. But we'll just go residential to be conservative. Even if that $400 client stays 2 years and 1 month, that's 10 grand, man. Like, what are we doing? And it's so much less stressful and so much more easier. So definitely take into consideration lifetime value and leverage that. And for those of you guys and gals that are asking, well, how much, how do I calculate ROI? What's my return on investment? So when it comes to cleaning, and I love having the recurring, that's why the one-time stuff really makes it hard to pencil with advertising or marketing at scale. As long as I can get all of my cash collected back in the first month, I'm happy. So if I'm commercial and I get a client for $1,500 a month. And the nice thing with commercial is a lot of times those clients can stay 5 or 10 years if you really do a good job. We've got guys that have had clients for 20 years. They've literally made like $1 million off of a single client. So, and even residential, they should be staying a couple of years, right? They may not stay 5 or 10, but a couple of years is very common for residential. So all that to say, if I get a client for $1,500 a month and I will spend every bit of $1,500, and you're like, well, hold on, I got to pay, say your labor is about half. Well, I got to pay $750. So I'm actually losing $750 that first month. It's like, yeah, granted. But if you get paid in advance, like we coach, you get the say you spend $1,500 to get a client, you get that $1,500 cash day one. So you go into the whole $1,500 for however long from when you spend money on the ad to when they sign up. And then as soon as they pay your $1,500, you're whole again. And then, over the next month, you kind of spend that $700 or $800 in cost of goods sold until the next month, boom, you get your $1,500 and now you're into the profit. And every month after that, it's just a free client, whatever the cost is to maintain it. So you can spend more, but I would be very comfortable spending whatever the first month revenue is to acquire a customer. And we're kind of on a Dan Kennedy theme, so I'll give one more thing. I'll turn it over to Jackson. We'll wrap it. But it's another thing I got from Dan Kennedy that I love is most of our clients tend to brag on how little they acquire customers for, which seems to make sense. Like I get the cheapest customers, right? Like I only do referrals. I don't spend any money in advertising. People are really proud of that. And that's fine. Referrals are great. And if you can hit your goals without advertising, God bless, that would be phenomenal. But the vast majority of companies can't. What Dan Kennedy says, it's not who can spend the least to acquire a customer, it's who can spend the most to acquire a customer. So, I use cell phone companies all the time. I don't know what an average cell phone bill is for a family, $200-$300 maybe per month. If I've heard, cell phone companies will spend like $2,000 to acquire that customer, but we're with Verizon, and I think we've been with them 25 years. Like literally, I mean, if it's, I don't know what we pay, call it $200 a month, $3,000 a year times 20 years, it's like $80,000. So if Verizon's like, I'm willing to spend $2,000 on a client and AT&T is only willing to spend 500, Verizon can come take that market. So I just want to encourage you guys and gals, it's not who can spend the least to acquire the customers, who can spend the most. And for you to be able to spend the most, you got to be able to know your tracking, your data, and you've got to make sure you're going based on data, not on drama, right? If you just go on emotions, you're going to crumple up. You're not going to understand what's really happening. You're going to cut ads that are working, be afraid to run new ads. You'll let stuff that isn't working run too long, and you'll waste a lot of ad spend, and that'll really inhibit your ability to spend the most. And customers that are competitors that come in and are better at marketing or better at tracking are going to spend more and more effectively, and they're going to eat up client share. All right, I feel like I got a little preachy, Jackson. What am I missing? Anything you'd like to say to wrap up our conversation around tracking, making decisions on data, not drama?
No, preachy is good, because I think with all of this, people, I mean, the true root, I think, of fear from people is the fear of spending money and not seeing the return. But the only reason they don't see the return is because they don't track. And as soon as you start tracking, it it eliminates that fear, because yeah, you're spending, let's just say you spend $100, but you see the results and you see the money come back into your bank account when you get customers from those ads or from that marketing effort, whatever it may be. So it becomes a lot easier when you know you have this stream, and you're gonna turn that $100 spend into like $1,000 spend or $2,000 spend in a month. It becomes a lot easier for you to do that because you know what you're going to get out of it. It helps eliminate that fear of spending, and the joy of getting new customers starts to overcome that and overcome your overall fear of things. So don't be afraid to do it, but you have to track. You got to track, because you'll start reading all your marketing efforts as like an Excel sheet, versus, I don't know, a greeting card or something like that. Whatever the emotional equivalent of an Excel sheet is. But yeah, once you do that, I guarantee you'll be a lot more efficient with marketing and be a lot happier with your overall marketing efforts.
And the crazy thing is, when you first start, it's not always rainbow. Sometimes you do lose money, but if you track, at least the money isn't lost. It's traded for data, right? So we coach you to track lead bid sales by source. So say I spend $500 on Facebook ads in a couple weeks span, and I get 30 leads, and of those leads, only 2 turn into bids. Well, I know my offer, that's data. And of those bids, maybe I get no clients. Well, I can see, if I spent $500, I got 30 leads. Was that 20, not even $20 a lead? Like, my lead cost is great, but the quality is not very good because I got 20 leads and I only turn into 2 bids. Was it the offer? So we can take that data, and then my next $500 is more likely to get even closer, or where I start getting into the profit. So what most folks do is they spend money, they don't track. They either get a return on that investment, but they didn't track it, so they miss, or they don't get they get a negative return. I spent $500, but I only get a client worth $100 a month, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe they get no physical return, but if they just track the data, that data could still be wildly valuable. So I've sold some multi-million-dollar businesses, and when you can tell a buyer, here's the 3 lead sources we have, here's what our cost per lead, cost per bid, cost per sale is, here's all the other things that we've tried and don't work, and here's all the data on that. And if you want to double the company, here's how you do it, and here's the lead sources. That can be a multi-million-dollar asset. So if you spend money to get this marketing system working, tracking is really going to make that a system that's worth a lot of money, as opposed to as opposed to Vegas, right? Throw in some money and hopefully more comes out, but sometimes it doesn't. You don't really know why. So, all right, preaching over, guys, gals. Hopefully that's been helpful. If you are stuck with your cleaning company, one of the different topic for a different day, but one of the biggest mistakes people come in with is they think they need marketing or solely marketing, but really it's their financials aren't right. Their hiring system's not right. So if you're stuck for any reason, even if you think it's marketing, feel free to reach out. We'll do everything we can to help you get unstuck. It's what we do all day, every day. And we'd love to help you with it. And if you're too afraid to reach out, we've got like 1,200 podcasts, free content. Check it out. Engage with us on Instagram, use the content, do whatever you need to do. But if you ain't getting the results that you want, do something different. We'll talk soon. See you.
Hey, Cleaning Nation, if you dug the content you just got, we don't do any ads and I don't sell anything on this podcast, but if you would just subscribe, rate, and review, it would be huge and I'd be so appreciative. Not only is it going to help me, but you'll help other owners of cleaning companies across the world work less, make more, and get profitable. So if you appreciate the value we give, again, subscribe, rate, and review. It would mean the world to me. I'd really appreciate it. And we sure appreciate your time and attention.